What the hey, MegaPodTastic's Crazy Joe coming to you on Sunday, the last day of the Great Philadelphia Comic Con, which I attended on Friday and Saturday. And I want to talk about the convention. Cinema Sickness was at the convention with me, and he did a video, and he did a video that I thought kind of begged for a response. I bought a bootleg Blu-ray at the show, and he gave me a hard time for it on his video. He said he was disappointed that I paid for that. But I got to respond to that. For one thing, I returned the bootleg, which I'll get into. That's a whole other story. But as Cinema Sickness actually mentions in his video, he has not attended a good number of Comic-Cons. And I have. I've attended conventions going back to the old Star Trek conventions in the 80s when Next Generation was on. I've been going to conventions since I was probably about 8 years old. And one of the great staples of any convention you go to, whether it be back in the day it was the Star Trek conventions, now it's the Comic-Cons, but one of the staples is there's always someone there selling bootleg video. Back in the day, it used to be bootleg VHS. Now it's bootleg DVDs. And I'm here to tell you, that is not a bad thing. It's actually a very, very good thing. Because we got to remember that DVD, first of all, physical media, though we may hate to hear this, it's a fact, physical media is dying. Less and less things are being released in physical media because they're not going to put out something that's not going to sell. And unfortunately, things in physical media aren't selling like they used to. So many people are going the streaming route. Now, I'm a fan of physical media. Cinema Sickness is a fan of physical media. And most of the people I know like physical media. And it's a shame, but it is going away. Now, even when it wasn't going away, even when physical media was very, very much still being produced regularly, they're only going to put out that which will sell. If a studio does not think they're going to make their money back, they're not going to put certain titles out. And that means things fall through the cracks. Now, this is the strength of the bootlegger. This is why we need guys selling bootleg videos. Now, some of you may be able to get this stuff off BitTorrent for yourself. Some of us, like myself, aren't very tech savvy. I've fiddled around with BitTorrent, but I've never really gotten it to work particularly well for me. So it's not something I really use. But bootleg, these guys who sell bootleg DVDs, they are often your savior. Now, I got some things here I want to show you and I want to talk about, and they're all bootlegs. And I'm very thankful that they exist. Now, first thing I want to show you is the movie Willard. Now, this movie, Willard, just came out on Blu-ray through Shout Factory. And it's a great disc, and I highly recommend picking it up. If you have any interest in this movie, pick up that Blu-ray. It's great. But for a long time, the rights to this movie were in limbo, and nobody could get this movie anywhere. It was not available. Nobody was going to make it available. And here is the great telltale sign. It was not re-released when the remake came out. In 2003, there was a remake starring Crispin Glover. Now, one thing you can say about remakes, whether you love remakes or hate remakes, is that one good thing about remakes is remakes usually, when a remake comes out, they usually re-release the original because the title is suddenly hot. And they're like, finally a chance to sell those old, 1973 movies that no one's touching. Now people are going to want it again because they're going to want to watch it before the remake. So when the remake of Willard came out, the original Willard, starring Bruce Davison and Ernest Borgnine, was not re-released. And when it was not re-released in 2003 to coincide with the remake, I knew it ain't going to be released for a long time to come, because now is the time. Now is the time it will sell. And then there's a remake out. And if they don't put it out now, they ain't putting it out. And from what I understood, there was a rights issue where whoever the rights holder was they were holding out for something, and as a result, it wasn't coming out. So this movie came out in 1973. I believe it was 73. Well, maybe it was 1970. In any event, I wasn't born yet. I was born in 76. This is a movie before my time. If I wanted to see this movie, and I did, I wanted to see this movie, I couldn't. This movie was not available to me. So I go to a convention, and there's a bootlegger selling it, and this is a pretty good quality bootleg. It's not perfect, but for a long, long time, for over a decade, this was the only way I could watch that movie. Now, the Blu-ray came out. I bought the Blu-ray. I don't watch this anymore. I watch the Blu-ray, and thank God for that. Thank God we got a better copy. But also, thank God for this bootleg, because until that Blu-ray came around, this was the only way you were going to see that movie. And I'm a firm believer that movies shouldn't be forgotten. They shouldn't slip through the cracks. But they do. And it's these bootleggers who make these movies available so they're not forgotten. And maybe only a small group of people at conventions are grabbing them. But that's kind of a good thing, because this movie, I got to see this movie in 2003 at the time the remake came out. And I loved it. I think I like it better than the remake. And that's a pretty good remake. I'm not a huge remake fan, but the 2003 Willard's a pretty good remake. And this is better. And I wouldn't have known this was better because it was not available. So I'm very thankful I have this. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is these bootlegs of The Muppet Show seasons 4 and 5. The Muppet Show officially came out through Disney. Disney put out The Muppet Show season 1, 2, and 3. And there's 5 seasons of The Muppet Show. And they announced that season 4 was going to be coming in, I think it was 2010. They said coming in 2010. They even showed in the ads box art, and it had a picture of Gonzo on it. It never came out. And that was 2010. Here we are. It's now 2018. We've been waiting 8 years for this thing. They've since put out 2 movies, The Muppets 2011 and Muppets Most Wanted. Again, when's the best time to do a tie-in like that? When there's a movie. That's the perfect time for a tie-in. If they didn't tie it in then, that tells you something. There's no interest at Disney to get that going. So these last 2 seasons of The Muppet Show, you're not going to be able to see them. But I got these bootlegs. These are not high-quality bootlegs. They're recorded off of television. I think they were recorded off of the Disney Channel in the 90s. So they're not great, but they're something. I can actually see these episodes, whereas I could not see them otherwise. So I welcome these bootlegs, and as soon as Disney decides to get off their buttocks and put out a official release of these seasons, I will happily purchase them again. And that's another thing. I like to think that if the studio knows that fans are buying bootlegs, that lights a fire under their ass, and it says, hey, we better get something official out there because the fans are getting it through alternate means. So here's another one, another Disney title. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Again, these were recorded off of television, not the best quality, but the only way you're going to get it. Not only is this not available on DVD, not only has this never been officially available on DVD, but it's not streaming anywhere. Now, Disney obviously owns the rights to Spider-Man, but this show also included Firestar and Iceman. So I gotta wonder if those characters, as X-Men characters, are owned by Fox. So I wonder if that is part of the tie-up. Maybe with the Fox deal, we'll finally get an official release of these. Maybe with the Disney streaming service, things like this or The Muppet Show will be available on the streaming service, so you will have an official means to watch them. But again, right now, you do not. You want to see this, you've got to track down a bootleg of it. And here's another Spider-Man title. This is the Japanese series Spider-Man from the 70s. This is a interesting show, to say the least. It's Spider-Man has a giant robot in it. It's bizarre. It's weird. It's worth checking out. It's very entertaining. Again, not an official release. I think there's an official Japanese release, but unless you have an all-region player, and I don't, that's not going to help. And I don't think the official release is subtitled in English as this is. So Here's another one. Here's a show that will never see the light of day in an official capacity. In 1987, there was a revival of the Monkees called New Monkees. New Monkees. I'm a fan of this show. I was a huge fan. I had 2 of the New Monkees on my podcast, and I might put that interview up on the YouTube channel. But this show was a failure. It was not a hit. And they only made 13 episodes, and those 13 episodes are right here. And this will never see the light of day in an official release. Now, these bootlegs were actually put together by Dino Kovas of the New Monkees. One of the New Monkees put these out from his own masters, and he wasn't looking to make a profit. He was giving these out for free, which, to be fair, I did not know. I bought these at a convention and later on found out that you could have gotten them originally straight from Dino. And Dino gave me a hard time about that in our interview. You got to listen to our interview. But I didn't know. If I knew, I would have rather get them straight from Dino. But again, this is not an official release, and you're never going to see an official release of this. And I'm glad I have them, because you're never going to see this. All right, let's go back to the Muppets, why don't we? In the 90s, there was a new Muppet Show called Muppets Tonight. It ran for 2 seasons, and it has never been on DVD. If you can't get 2 seasons of the Muppet Show out on DVD, and the Muppet Show is much more iconic than Muppets Tonight, then, you're never going to see Muppets Tonight. You'll see the last 2 seasons of the Muppet Show before you'll see Muppets Tonight. So this is another one not available through any official means. But I got every episode here. They're all recorded off the Disney Channel. It's not perfect quality. Disney, you want to put out an official release, I will happily scoop it up. But for now, I'm glad I was able to get a bootleg, because at least I can enjoy this show in some capacity, whereas I wouldn't be able to otherwise. Now, here's the last one I pulled for you. This was a failed show from NBC from the late 90s, The Nightmare Cafe. It starred Robert Englund. It was about a mysterious cafe that helped people out. It was kind of like part Twilight Zone. I don't know. It's hard to explain if you've never heard of this show. Again, it was a short-lived series. I think there's 13 episodes. No, there's only 6 episodes. They only made 6 episodes of this show. This show was a complete failure. It's highly unlikely this will ever see an official release. But I was a fan, and I'm happy to have this. It's not perfect. I'd prefer an official release, but this is what I got. Now, the Blu-rays I picked up at the Great Philly Comic-Con were the 1981 Spider-Man series. Now, the 1981 Spider-Man series was the prelude to Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. The same animators that did this show did the 81 Spider-Man the year prior. So 81 Spider-Man ran for 1 season. Then the next season, they added Iceman and Firestar and changed the title to Amazing Friends. So sort of, if you want to get right down to it, the first season of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends is actually kind of the second season of the 81 Spider-Man series. They just were like, hey, let's add a couple characters. And it became much more popular when they added the other characters. So the 81 series is sort of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends without the Amazing Friends. It never gets rerun. It's never been officially released. So I go to the convention. There's a guy selling it on Blu-ray. I ask him, hey, can I pop in the Blu-ray, see what they look like? They were pristine, perfect image. It was amazing how good they looked. They look better than any of these that I just showed you. These all came off of television. I don't know what the source was on that 81 series, but it could not have possibly looked better. It was so clean. It looked like it came from some kind of master tape. I don't know where he got them, but they were great. There was just one problem. It was not in the correct aspect ratio. It was stretched to fit a widescreen, whereas the show was shot in 4:3 because it was the 80s. So I look at it and I immediately notice that, and when you see that, it doesn't mean that the disc is wrong. It could mean the setting on the TV is wrong. So I actually asked him, and I said, hey, is that the TV setting, or is the disc stretched? And he told me it was the TV, and that could be fixed. So I bought it. I took it home. It was the disc. So the picture quality was absolutely beautiful, but it was in the wrong aspect ratio. So the next day I took it back and I got my money back. If it had been in the correct aspect ratio, I would have been extremely pleased with that purchase because, again, it's something that's not seeing the light of day. So Cinema Sickness was giving me a hard time for bootlegs, but I'm always a fan of an official release first. But if the studios are not going to put out an official release, I still want to get my hands on the material. And I will be very happy to settle for a bootleg over nothing. If you want to give me a bootleg, I will take it. And I will welcome that bootleg until the studio decides, hey, guess what? We should make money off of this. Let's put it out in an official capacity, which is obviously the ideal. But I'm a hardcore Muppet fan. I'm glad I got the full Muppet Show, and I'm glad I got the Muppets Tonight. Disney, get on it. I want the official release, but I'm not disappointed I have these one bit. So that's my little bootleg rant, and I stand by it. And I'm really glad that we got those guys who are making these things available. I even asked the guy for something. There's a TV show from the early 80s. It was the first original series made for Nickelodeon. It was called Out of Control, starred Dave Coulier. I had a cast member from Out of Control as a guest on the podcast. Marty Schiff, who played the character of Hearn Burford on Out of Control, was my podcast guest. And I would love an official release of Out of Control, but they don't make one, and they don't air the shows anymore. Marty Schiff said he and Dave Coulier even approached Nickelodeon and tried to buy the rights to the show to put it out on DVD. Nickelodeon refused to sell it. So what are you going to do? It's not available, and nobody has it, not even the bootleggers. And I keep telling the bootleggers, get Out of Control. I will buy that. You get that, I will buy that, because I want the show, and no one has it. And the first person to make it available to me gets my money. That's where we stand. So, hey, keep on wearing those pajamas.